time. There was nothing, but then it appeared, a beast not from this earth.
Horror and comedy are two of the most difficult genres to master, and when you try to combine them, you're essentially playing cinematic Russian roulette. Both rely on precision timing, audience manipulation, and an acute understanding of human psychology, one to make you laugh and the other to make your skin crawl. But their fundamental purposes often clash. Horror thrives on tension and the fear of the unknown, while comedy functions as a release valve, puncturing that tension with absurdity or irony. It's a delicate balancing act, and when it works you get films like An American Werewolf in London, Evil Dead 2, or Shaun of the Dead. Movies that seamlessly weave scares and laughs without undercutting either. When it doesn't, you get, well, Leprechaun in the Hood.
But the Emerald Isle to your place in the hood, and the man of green comes to do no good.
Get him the f*** out of here.
So why do some horror comedies succeed while others fall flat? The key is respect for both genres. A film like Evil Dead 2 may lean into slapstick insanity, but it never loses sight of its horror roots. Sam Raimi ensured that the grotesque practical effects, relentless pace, and Bruce Campbell's increasingly unhinged performance kept the audience on edge.
Oops.
Shaun of the Dead works because it treats the zombie apocalypse with real stakes, allowing the comedy to emerge organically from the characters and their reactions rather than mocking the genre itself.
Well, now what? I'll have to get more stuff. What's in the shed? I don't know, it's locked. Why is it locked? It's always been locked. Well, you know, we're gonna... Purple Rain. No. Sign of the Times. Definitely not. The Batman soundtrack. Throw it. Oh, there's some good in the shed. You said it was locked.
In contrast, lesser horror comedies like Leprechaun in the Hood or Dracula Dead and Loving It often mistake spoofing the genre for actually engaging with it, resulting in films that aren't particularly funny or scary, just awkwardly self-aware.
She's alive?
She's Nosferatu.
She's Italian?
This brings us to The Monkey, Os Perkins' adaptation of Stephen King's short story of the same name. Perkins is known for his unsettling, slow-burn horror, seen in films like The Blackcoat's Daughter, Gretel and Hansel, and Longlegs, where dread is built meticulously rather than served up with cheap jump scares. King's The Monkey, on the other hand, is a bizarre mix of supernatural terror and almost campy absurdity, about a murderous toy monkey that kills whenever it claps its cymbals. On paper, it sounds like something that could go full puppet master levels of schlock, but in the right hands it's more like Malignant, a film that leans into its own insanity while never winking at the audience directly.
We need backup! Send the National Guard!
The question is, does Perkins make the horror of the monkey genuinely terrifying, or does the sheer ridiculousness of its premise turn into an unintentional comedy? Hey guys, what's happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we're exploring the original short story by Stephen King, the film adaptation and the meaning of its ending, followed by a review.
It must be vanquished. Why don't you vanquish it, huh, Bill? Wait!
Stephen King has an uncanny ability to take the mundane and twist it into something deeply horrifying. A car, a dog, a hotel, even a laundry press. He's turned all of them into conduits for absolute terror. The Monkey, first published in 1980 in Gallery magazine and later included in 1985's Skeleton Crew, follows that same pattern. At first glance, it's a story about a simple wind-up toy, but as you'd expect from King, this isn't just any old childhood relic. Every time it claps its cymbals, someone dies. What could have been a goofy B-movie concept instead becomes a chilling tale about generational trauma, fate, and the horror of inescapable evil. The story follows Hal Shelburne, a man in his 40s who, while rummaging through his childhood home, stumbles across an old toy monkey in the attic. The moment he sees it, buried under piles of forgotten junk, the memories come flooding back, memories he spent decades trying to bury. When Hal was a boy, he discovered the monkey in his father's study, and from that point on, death seemed to follow him. Every time the toy clapped its cymbals, someone, often a person close to Hal, died under mysterious or horrific circumstances. Animals, family members, even complete strangers, all dropping dead with eerie synchronicity. Terrified, Hal eventually tried to get rid of the monkey, tossing it into a well, but as he now discovers, decades later, it's back. The moment he lays eyes on it, the deaths start again, and Hal realizes he's caught in a cycle that never truly ended. Worse yet, his own children may now be at risk, and so, desperate, he attempts to destroy the cursed object once and for all, taking it out to a lake and sinking it, weighted down and wrapped in chains. The story ends on an ominous note. For now, the monkey is gone, but as any good horror fan knows, evil never truly dies. It just waits for the next unlucky soul to find it. Like much of King's best work, The Monkey isn't just about supernatural horror. It's about deeper, more existential fears. It isn't just a creepy toy, it's a symbol of inherited fear. Hal's father had it, Hal had it, and now his children are pretty much at risk. The idea that trauma and horror can be passed down, lurking under the surface until it resurfaces at the worst possible time, makes this story far more unnerving than a simple cursed object narrative. Hal thought he was rid of the monkey when he threw it into the well as a child, but evil doesn't disappear, it waits. This is classic King territory. You might think you've moved on, but some horrors never truly die. Unlike many of King's more straightforwardly evil antagonists, It, Randall Flagg, and Christine, the monkey doesn't have a personality, a motive, or a vendetta. It just kills. The randomness of its victims makes it even more terrifying. You don't have to be a bad person or make a mistake for the monkey to choose you. It just does. The ending lingers with an unsettling sense of dread. Hal successfully dumps the monkey in the lake, but there's no cathartic triumph, no final confirmation that the nightmare is over. We've seen this kind of ending before in Pet Sematary, 1408, and The Shining, where even if the protagonist wins, there's always a shadow of doubt, a suggestion that evil isn't so easily destroyed. Given that the monkey has already survived being dumped once, there's every reason to believe that it will return again, waiting for the next unlucky person to find it. It may not be one of King's most famous stories, but it perfectly encapsulates what makes his horror so effective. The premise is simple, almost silly on the surface, but he wrings every ounce of dread from it by grounding it in real human fear. The story isn't really about a killer toy, it's about the helplessness of knowing that no matter how hard you try, some things will always come back to haunt you. We kick things off in 1999 with Petey Shelbourne, Adam Scott, a man who's clearly had a worse day than most. Stumbling into a pawn shop, drenched in blood and holding a nightmarish wind-up monkey, he frantically tries to warn the shop owner that this seemingly harmless toy is in fact the harbinger of doom. The monkey, he explains, is cursed. Every time it bangs its cymbals together, someone is going to be, in his words,
"Fucked to hell."
Of course, the shop owner doesn't buy it, but the monkey is more than happy to prove Petey's point. It starts playing its eerie tune, and for a moment, nothing happens. That is until a mouse bites through a wire, knocking into a statue holding a harpoon gun. The gun fires, impales the shop owner, and then, in a flourish of absurdly gruesome horror, reels the harpoon back in, along with a good chunk of the poor guy's intestines. Petey, now fully convinced that he's in the worst Final Destination sequel ever, whips out a flamethrower and attempts to incinerate the monkey, because that's normal pawnshop inventory.
To witness its power over life and death in its most devious ways.
Cut to the aftermath of Petey abandoning his family, because nothing says Father of the Year like skipping town after your cursed toy kills a few people. His wife Lois, played by Tatiana Maslany, is left alone to raise their twin boys, Hal and Bill, both played by Christian Convery, who as adults are played by Theo James.
When I was a kid, my twin brother and I found something that loved to kill. I did everything I could to make it go the f*** away.
Older Hal narrates about how his relationship with Bill was never great, mostly because Hal was the shy, nervous type, while Bill had all the sensitivity of a schoolyard bully with a superiority complex. Lois, for her part, is just trying to keep things together, while maintaining a gloriously cynical outlook on life.
Whoever controls it controls life and death. And those deaths are really f***ed up.
Inevitably, because the universe loves irony, the boys eventually stumble upon the monkey among their father's old belongings. The box it's kept in has the words "like life" scrawled across it, though they assume it's supposed to say lifelike. Hal, ever the curious one, winds the key on the monkey's back and nothing happens. Crisis averted? Not quite.
Everybody dies.
Some of us peacefully, and some of us horribly, violently.
And that's life?
Later, the boys head to a hibachi restaurant with their babysitter Annie, played by Danica Dreyer, and the monkey appears in the car. But as they enjoy their meal, the damn toy decides it's showtime. The cymbals start clashing, and once the tune is over, the chef who had been flirting with Annie moments before accidentally decapitates her. Her head lands right on the grill, because if you're gonna die in a horror movie, at least make it theatrical. At school, Bill, who's fully embraced his role as that kid, uses Hal's attachment to the monkey as fuel for relentless bullying.
I'll say, I want to suck its banana. No, Bill, no. Say it, or I'll eat the rest of your placenta, bitch.
Understandably sick of the abuse, his brother Hal figures, why not turn this death machine to my advantage, and tries to use the monkey to get rid of Bill. He winds it up, waits, and waits, but nothing happens. Instead, when Bill comes home, Lois, who'd been innocently baking a cake, suddenly starts bleeding from every orifice on her face before collapsing in a grotesque, agonizing heap. According to doctors, it's a boomerang aneurysm, which sounds made up, but in a Stephen King story, might as well be a technical term for because the plot needs it.
It kills who it wants, when it feels like it. Smiting the ones who deserved it, the ones who didn't, and everyone in between.
At Lois's funeral, Bill, completely shattered, refuses to accept that his mother is gone. Hal, meanwhile, realizes that the monkey isn't just some creepy childhood toy. It's an unstoppable force of death that needs to be destroyed. So, in a last-ditch attempt to end the nightmare once and for all, he decides to chop the damn thing to bits. After the tragic and wildly over-the-top deaths caused by their cymbal-banging tormentor, young Hal and Bill are packed off to live with their Uncle Chip, played by Osgood Perkins, and Aunt Ada, Sarah Levy, who are blissfully unaware that their new house guests come with a side order of inevitable doom.
Sleeve tight, you two.
Just when the boys think that they've finally escaped its clutches, the monkey somehow reappears at their new home, perfectly intact. Bill, still in full denial mode, decides to test his theory that it's all just a series of unfortunate coincidences. So he winds it up again, and surprise surprise, Uncle Chip is promptly obliterated during a camping trip, where a stampede of wild horses tramples him in a sleeping bag, leaving him looking like someone put through a literal meat grinder. At this point, the boys finally clue in that maybe, just maybe, this thing is bad news. So in a brilliant display of that should do it logic, they chuck the monkey back in its box and hurl it down a well, assuming that that's the last they'll ever see of it.
It's like that restaurant. Spaghetti City.
Trampled by a stampede of 67 wild horses in a sleeping bag on a camping trip. It looked like someone had drop-kicked a cherry pie.
Fast forward 25 years and Hal is now a loner with a crippling fear that anyone he gets close to will end up 6 feet under. He has a son, Petey, played by Colin O'Brien, whom he only sees once a year, because nothing says quality parenting like minimal involvement. When Hal arrives to pick up Petey for their annual awkward bonding time, he's hit with the worst possible news. His ex-wife, Laura Minnell, and her new husband, leading family expert Ted Hammerman, played by Elijah Wood, have decided that it would be best if Hal were permanently cut out of Petey's life. Ted is illegally adopting the boy, and there's nothing that Hal can do about it.
The coroner said it was an accident. But it was no accident. It was a monkey.
That's enough. I'm sure you can see where this is going, but I'm going to leave it there.
Meanwhile, Aunt Ada, now living alone, unknowingly finds herself the next contestant in the monkey's Wheel of Death. A trip down to her basement ends with her crashing through a rotten staircase, landing face first onto a pile of fish hooks, because subtlety is overrated. Bleeding but still standing, she stumbles towards some rubbing alcohol, but before she can patch herself up, she hears a strange noise coming from the stove. Now, any sane person might take a step back, but Ada, possibly concussed, leans in closer, just in time for the gas burner to ignite, setting her head ablaze. Screaming, she charges out of the house in a fiery panic before running, at full speed no less, straight into the sharp end of a for sale sign. And just like that, the monkey claims another victim in the most needlessly elaborate way possible. With Aunt Ada now reduced to an estate sale listing, her belongings, including of course the accursed monkey, are auctioned off. Enter Ricky, a lonely kid and son of a local police officer, who picks up the monkey, and in doing so, officially becomes the next poor bastard in line for a series of increasingly ridiculous murders.
You wouldn't happen to remember a wind-up toy monkey?
Not a cherished childhood memory now, was it?
No.
Elsewhere, Hal and Petey are on their way to a horror-themed amusement park, because what better way to bond than by taking your child to a place specifically designed to traumatize him?
The toy monkey?
It's evil. It's basically the devil.
Petey is also working on a school project about family trees and asks his father about their relatives. Wanting absolutely no part in reliving his childhood trauma, Hal blatantly lies and tells him that he doesn't have any siblings, but he does at least mention Lois, which is progress, I guess. Later that night, out of nowhere, Hal gets a call from Bill, whom he hasn't seen or spoken to in years, and is informed that the monkey is back.
Hello, brother. The monkey that likes killing our family. It's back.
Bill then tells him he needs to head to Aunt Ada's house to settle her affairs, but before Hal can even process that, things take an immediate turn for the worse. As he steps outside, a fan topples over and lands in the water. Before he can yell out, a woman obliviously dives into the now electrified pool and is instantly fried like a human toaster strudel. As her body erupts in a shower of sparks, Hal finally gets undeniable proof that the monkey has been reactivated, and all hell is about to break loose again. The father and son eventually arrive at Aunt Ada's home, where Petey, already exhausted from the whole cursed monkey of death situation, gets even more annoyed when the overly chipper real estate agent Barbara casually drops the bomb that Hal has a brother. As they step inside the house, Barbara cheerfully prattles on about the string of increasingly grotesque accidents that have been plaguing the town since Aunt Ada's unfortunate head-on collision with the real estate sign. Then, because the monkey operates on the principle of maximum absurdity, she opens a closet door, only for a shotgun to come flying out like it's part of a goddamn Looney Tunes gag. It fires on impact, immediately reducing Barbara into an unrecognizable pile of real estate agent confetti, leaving Hal standing there, stunned, with what is unmistakably a piece of her fingertip in his mouth. It's that kind of day.
Officer, I promised my son that I was going to take him to horror heaven.
Actually, officer, we moved off going to horror heaven. This is obviously far more important.
As it turns out, the man behind this escalating carnival of death is actually Bill. And no, he's not just an innocent bystander in all of this. He's deliberately using the monkey to try and murder Hal. He never quite got over that whole "our mother bled from every orifice and dropped dead" thing, and has been holding Hal responsible ever since. So, in a move that really says a lot about his grasp of basic logic, Bill hired Ricky to find the monkey and bring it to him, assuming he could just wind it up and let fate take care of his brother for him. The problem: the monkey doesn't do targeted assassinations, it just kills whoever it wants, meaning that instead of conveniently offing Hal, Bill has been racking up an impressive body count of complete strangers, one of whom is Hal's co-worker Dwayne, who meets his end when the monkey decides that choking on his own vape pen is a suitably humiliating way to go. Bill, now thoroughly fed up with the monkey's lack of precision, decides to take things a step further and orders Ricky to kidnap Hal and Petey. The plan forced Petey to turn the key and kill his own father. You know, normal, well-adjusted sibling behavior.
Turn the key, see what happens.
Ricky, being the absolute genius that he is, actually goes through with it, abducting them and dragging them to Bill's hideout. And Petey, proving he's got more brains than half of the cast combined, manages to get through a series of ridiculously convoluted booby traps and confronts his uncle. Meanwhile, outside, Ricky, who, let's be honest, has never been the sharpest tool in the shed, absent-mindedly scratches his head with his loaded gun, accidentally pulling the trigger and blasting a hole in a wasp nest. The monkey, sensing an opportunity for peak chaos, plays its little tune, and in what can only be described as a biblical-level flex, the entire hive of wasps launches itself into Ricky's open mouth, burrowing inside and exploding out through his face. Hal finally charges into the building for a final showdown with Bill, only to find his brother in full tantrum mode, literally begging the monkey to kill Hal. When that doesn't work, Bill tries to manually force the monkey's arm down to hit the drum, which, as it turns out, is a very bad idea. In response, it decides it's time to stop screwing around and start smashing its cymbals at full speed, shaking the entire damn ground. Outside, in the grandest of grand finales, a plane plummets from the sky and crashes into the town, wiping out half the population in one of the most spectacularly unnecessary acts of destruction ever committed to film. In the aftermath of this apocalyptic disaster, Hal finally gets through to Bill, offering him an apology for what happened to their mother all those years ago. And for a brief fleeting moment, it actually looks like Bill is willing to let go of his rage and rebuild a real relationship with his brother. Because irony is a cruel mistress, the monkey delivers one final, perfectly timed cymbal clash. Then a booby trap is triggered, a bowling ball is launched, and before Bill even has time to process what's happening, the ball connects with his skull, crushing it like a melon at a county fair. Hal and Petey, now fully accepting that the universe has no real interest in letting them have a normal life, simply turn and leave in complete silence. Driving through the town, the full extent of the monkeys' final massacre unfolds before them. Bodies are scattered across the wreckage, entire buildings are in ruins, and the weight of it all settles in. Then, as they stop at a red light, a pale man on a white horse rides past them, because at this point, why not throw in a literal embodiment of death just for good measure? Taking all of this in stride, Hal casually invites Petey to go dancing because hey, his mum used to love dancing, and his son, somehow not completely broken by the last 48 hours, agrees. But as they drive off into the night, a bus full of cheerleaders drives past them, blissfully unaware of their imminent fate. Then, in a final act of sheer overkill, a passing truck casually decapitates all of them in one clean sweep.
Well, it started with sort of, I wanted to conjure my feeling about Stephen King, as opposed to just sort of hold the book open with one hand and type with the other and just do like a straight adaptation. Yeah. I wanted to sort of recreate my own sort of personal feeling about the man, and I've always found joy in what he does, and sort of this underlying melancholy that goes with the joy, and he sort of has this, he's an entertainer, right? So I wanted to entertain. It never occurred to me to try to use this monkey to try to terrify anybody. It's a toy monkey, it's sort of goofy, and so I kind of wanted to embrace the cartoon element of it. I wanted to lean into sort of Itchy and Scratchy and Chuck Jones, and those were sort of Robert Zemeckis. That kind of flavor was more important to me.
Theo, you just...
Osgood Perkins' absurd, blood-soaked, and gleefully ridiculous adaptation of Stephen King's short story takes the bare bones of that original tale and stretches it into an all-out horror comedy, all while poking fun at King's own tropes with the self-awareness of someone who knows his audience is here for one thing: absolute carnage. It's a level of ridiculousness that makes the Final Destination films look like restrained drama pieces. But unlike those movies, where the tension comes from the dread of when the next freak accident will occur, the monkey revels in the sheer unpredictability of it all. Perkins knows that at a certain point, death stops being scary and starts being comedy, because when the monkey bangs its drum, you know something terrible is about to happen, but you have no idea what.
If you're a smart person and you start looking at horror and you're kind of like, oh, well, it's just about how we deal with death, right? Like horror movies are just about how we deal with the fact that we die, right? Like that's sort of elemental, and maybe people don't think about it that way, but isn't that what it is? Isn't that what it all is? Like we're looking at these movies which are sort of saying, this person dies this way because of this, or in this way. Well, look what happens after you die. It's kind of like that. Sometimes people die like this, and sometimes it's a fucking chainsaw massacre. And so it's like, what happens to us is the big question, right? And it's all in our minds whether we entertain it or not. And I think that there's an awareness that I'm indebted to that genre, that I'm connected to that genre, but that it's not, as my 15-year-old daughter says, Dad, it's not that deep. And it's kind of not.
Tonally, this is a huge departure from his previous work. Where Longlegs was a slow burn nightmare dripping in eerie dread, The Monkey is a full-on horror circus. Its Final Destination by way of Evil Dead 2, dialing up the insanity with every scene. Perkins doesn't just embrace the camp, he smashes through it head first, making it clear from the opening scene that this isn't a film that takes itself seriously. And that's exactly why it works. The first half builds tension while setting up its characters, but by the time the second half kicks in, Perkins goes full throttle on the chaos, ramping up the kills and leaning into the absurdity.
I think the horror genre presents the opportunity to sort of do whatever you want, and all of it, right? It kind of shines a light into the darkness. It kind of wonders what's behind the veil. It kind of reminds us we don't really know what the fuck is happening. And so the limitlessness of the genre is really appealing. And I think that's why so many kind of interesting artists go towards it, because it really gives you the most freedom. And you know, there's no rules. You can kind of express yourself as poetically as you need to, because there's no reality to kind of keep you at bay.
But beneath the layers of gore and dark humor, there's still a thematic backbone. The film plays with the idea of inevitability, how death is random, uncontrollable, and comes for everyone eventually.
Everybody dies.
Hal spends his life trying to distance himself from the monkey's curse, but all that does is leave him isolated and miserable. Bill, on the other hand, tries to harness the monkey's power, believing he can control who lives and dies. Spoiler alert, he can't. The monkey doesn't take requests, fate doesn't negotiate, and in the film's final moments, when Bill finally seems to let go of his anger, he's instantly crushed by a bowling ball. A poetic bit of irony considering it belonged to his mother, whose death he never stopped obsessing over. In the end, the weight of his trauma literally kills him. Subtle? No. Effective? Absolutely.
I think being afforded the freedom to kind of swing for the fences and not feel self-conscious that if it didn't work, it didn't work. You know, try things, find things in the moment, push boundaries, and some things work and some things don't. I think that was, in a way, the key, especially with Bill. We wanted to make him as kind of maniacal as possible. But also, you know, even though this is a wild, insane piece of entertainment, you need to find a reality there, and that was particularly important for me with Hal and his son. Make that feel real as possible. Make it, sounds cheesy to say, but make it emotional in some way where the stakes are high enough. Because if it's all just superfluous fun, then it loses a bit of weight or stakes in some way. So that was a little kind of tightrope that I had to tread.
And then, just when you think the film has reached its peak absurdity, Death himself shows up. Yes, in a move so audacious it circles back around to brilliance, the pale rider casually trots through town on a white horse, nodding at Hal and Petey, as if to say, "Busy night, huh?" It's the kind of ending that feels like Perkins just threw his hands up and said, "Screw it, let's go all the way." It's so out of left field that it actually makes sense, fitting perfectly into a world where death has no rules and reality is completely broken down.
The horror genre remains the sort of the genre where there are no boundaries, there's no rule, there's no sense. It's the most poetical, you would think, right? Because again, you're dealing with this stuff that you can't, it's all guesswork. It's all poetry around this weird thing, this news, I shouldn't say bad news, this news that we all die.
But beneath the chaos, the movie's emotional core is surprisingly strong. Lois's death lingers over everything, not just as a tragic event, but as the moment that defined both brothers' lives. Hal coped by withdrawing from the world, terrified that anyone he loves will meet the same fate. Bill, on the other hand, let his grief fester into rage, wearing his childhood funeral suit like armor, refusing to move on. When the brothers finally reconcile, it's not a triumphant moment, it's tragic because you realize Bill was always beyond saving. Call it fate, irony, or just a very cruel sense of humor, but the message is clear. You don't outrun your past, and you definitely don't outrun death.
The horror genre because it has life and death in it, therefore it has everything, right? Because it entertains the mystery and sort of it guesses about what's behind the veil, like what do we not see, understand, what can we not touch, what can we not cope with, what's held back from us, what's hidden from us, then it's really everything. Because you get to be hyper real if you want to be, hyper weird if you want to be, very abstract if you want to be, very viscerally gritty on the ground if you want to be.
The film leans fully into the idea that death isn't just random, it's indifferent. The monkey's power doesn't just come from a cursed backstory or some ancient evil, it just is. No reason, no logic, just carnage on a schedule. Hal and Petey may have survived, but the monkey's still out there. The cycle isn't over. It's just waiting for the next unlucky soul to turn the key. The movie isn't flawless. Some plot threads are left hanging, and there's a sense that a deeper exploration of its themes got lost under the mountain of gore. But honestly, that's not the point. The monkey isn't trying to be a deep psychological horror. It's here to entertain, to shock, and to remind us that movies, at their core, are supposed to be fun.
My friend Jordan Peele has said and will say all the time, the difference between a horror movie and a comedy is the music. And I think that kind of falls into just what I was saying before about like, if the horror genre sort of in its most sort of deconstructed form is like a study on life and death, why not be a little funny about it too? Why not just let the air out a little bit also? Because we're all still here, right? We all got to deal with it. So maybe just like a little giggle every once in a while is fine.
Perkins understands this better than most, and what he delivers is 98 minutes of pure, chaotic, blood-drenched entertainment. It might not be one of the scariest films of the year, but it's absolutely one of the most fun to watch.
I was just curious, like after making these 3 films back to back to back, is there anything that stands out to you going forward with your directorial style, or like with the next film, is there anything obvious to you that you want to do differently or try differently?
I think I don't know if this answers it, but I think that at this point right now, I get one movie that gets to be whatever I want it to be. Just one. Guillermo del Toro said that to me. He's like, you get one now. The way you want it, exactly the way you want it. He's also the guy who says making a movie is like eating a sandwich of shit. Sometimes they give you more bread with yours. So that's all to say that it's really hard to do. Nobody in my job really feels great ever. So when you have a success and it feels all right, cling to it for dear life. And I think I get the one now. So I know what it is, and it's well, guess what? It's fucking weird. But it's also present day, which I don't do. So how about that? I'm gonna try present day. Stop hiding in period. You know, shoot a phone every once in a while, man.